everyone. Welcome to the next episode of PDs SEA. Last month, program directors and residency leadership from across the country came together in Chicago for the annual SAAAPM meeting, also referred to as SAAAPM. It's the Society of Academic Associations of Anesthesiology and Perioperative Medicine. And within SAAAPM, there's the core program director association where all the residency leadership meets and discusses topics related to being a PD, things going on in residency within anesthesiology. I find this meeting extremely helpful to learn and also network with other program directors, and I highly recommend it for any program director or associate program director who's never been before. For the past many years, we have ended each meeting with the Everything You Wanted to Know session. Bryan, do you want to share a little bit about the session and topics we discussed as you led it this year as one of the directors?
Well, I would love to, and I should just tell everybody I'm actually calling in from the New York State Society of Anesthesiologists annual postgraduate assembly meeting right now. I'm on site. It's very exciting. This is the second biggest anesthesia conference every year, everybody. So it's a delight to be here with you. I had the privilege of moderating the Everything You Wanted to Know session. And this is a session where all the program directors get surveyed, and we get to find out what everyone's thinking or what they do, and maybe they're afraid to say in public. So we get some interesting data about where PDs' minds are at, what's going on in their programs. Is there anything specifically you'd like to know, Marianne, that came out of that session?
Yeah, great. There was lots of great discussions, always a fun session. But a few things came up that I thought were really interesting and would love to hear your perspectives on. So according to the survey that was responded by program directors at the meeting, only 15% intended to stay in the role beyond 6 more years. What do you think drives the short lifespan of program directors?
Well, it makes me feel old. I'm going on to I think I've lost count, my 11th or 12th year now. So that makes me elderly or geriatric at this point. You know, it's just a hard job. And I think that there are many different stressors in many people's jobs, but you see people stick around in the chair role a lot longer. I don't want to say our job is harder than a chair's job, but I think we do have unique stressors. And I'd like to hear if you feel the same way, Marianne. I feel like we are actually not really part of any designated population within the department. I mean, we're certainly not residents, right? We're practicing anesthesiologists. But we definitely, or I feel, apart from the core faculty group too, because we are the single individual, and we have people on our team, of course, but we're the single individual who are put in a position to look out for the interests and the well-being of the residents, make sure that we're meeting the core program requirements the ACGME insists upon. And oftentimes that's at odds with the interests of the faculty or the institution. So you end up being in an odd situation where you kind of take grief from both sides. You get resident feedback. We do our best to make them happy. Hopefully they are, but sometimes they're not. And then you also get a pretty constant stream from the faculty. They have their opinions about how we should do our jobs, and they're not always in line with the goals of the residency training program. Am I off to a great start? Is any of this resonating with you?
Absolutely. I think that was probably one of the first thing I noticed when I took over the program director role was that you're kind of in this divide of not being a resident, but not, and the faculty and your peers and your colleagues that you've known for many years also realizing that you may not always be on their side and that you're going to be the advocate for the resident and the residency program. Yeah, so it was definitely something I noticed and feel like I've worked on over the years is trying to figure out where I belong and, kind of the conversations that I have with faculty that may be very different than the conversations I have with residents. How do I feel in that kind of gray area as the program director?
Has it changed your perspective? I guess I would say, now that you've done it for a bit, has it changed the way that you look at situations, problems, challenges within the department from the way you did previously?
No, absolutely. I think it's a different perspective that I have. I also am trying to think about, who am I speaking for in these meetings, and also realizing the perspective of the other leaders in our department and where they're coming from and trying to understand that's probably in their role. They have this perspective, which is maybe different when, I chatted with them many years ago when they weren't in that role. So yeah, it's an interesting place to be as a program director.
Other people, I feel they get to have simple takes. Older people usually say kids these days. And the younger generation usually feels as though the older generation just doesn't get it or get where they're coming from. I feel like when you're in the program director role, you're not really allowed to land on those really easy, simple points of view. You kind of have to force yourself to take a very well-rounded point of view on things and understand it in a more complex manner to navigate that. And yeah, most of the people at the conference didn't see a long lifespan ahead of them in the role. I think if you do the math, most people applying to anesthesia right now, over 50% are going to have a new program director when they get there or experience a change in program director over the course of their training. It's a challenge. We need support. And the meeting we just went to is a great source of that support. Anyway, what else did you see there you wanted to hear about?
Yeah, another important topic I think, we talk about in all different anesthesiology meetings. It's kind of everywhere. It's the buzzword these days is AI. And when surveying the program directors, it is not widely being used by program directors yet, especially when we think about residency administration. Do you use AI and how do you use it in your program?
I use it a little bit. I feel like you being in Palo Alto are going to put me to shame. You guys are trailblazers. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say this. I am using AI a decent amount for things that were somewhat work intensive, but not really critical. Medical student letters of recommendation for residency. That's probably the big area. And also, I'm asked oftentimes to put together reviews of promotion for faculty from other institutions. So what I'll do sometimes is I will take the promotion criteria, feed them into AI, and some elements maybe of a person's CV de-identified, and that will give me a head start too. Because those can be very time intensive. Those can be, hours and hours of work. And in both instances, I feel as though my willingness to put my signature on something is 95% of what the person's asking for. So I am using it in that domain. I'm actually doing a workshop here at the PGA on how to use AI. And I'm doing a little section on AI for scheduling. And I've actually played with it a little bit. The input end of things might be a little bit more time intensive than making it worthwhile, but I'm trying to explore to see if I can use AI in that regard. But I'm almost afraid to ask, how are you using it? Because I feel as though at Stanford, you guys are really leading the way, probably, given where you are.
I would love to hear more about your AI for scheduling, because I think that is definitely an area where we could use, where there's a lot of man powers, like our chief residents still make our schedule, and AI could take away a lot of that manpower, and we could just oversee the outputs that are coming out from it. I will say that I am part of Stanford and in Silicon Valley, but I am not the most tech savvy of the group here. So I do use AI for presentations. I do think it helps just kind of making slides sometimes for presentations on topics. I have used it for letters of recommendation, but I do think the personal touch is still important. And so I will also just kind of use it as an outline and then add my little notes and words in to make it a little bit more personal. That was also surprising at the meeting that many program directors were not yet using it for letters of recommendation. As you mentioned, you have, and it's something or an area where I think many faculty across the country are probably using AI a bit more. Use AI in lots of different ways within our department, but not necessarily me and the residency program and administrative work.
Well, I have not yet used AI for my residence letters of recommendation for fellowship or jobs. I think it's guilt. I think it's my conscience because I know them so well, and I feel as though they deserve that personal touch, like you said. And I also do use it for primarily the rough draft. And then I go back in. Sometimes the AI uses over flowery language, and you want to go back there and change the tone and things. But it has saved a considerable amount of time. It's going to be interesting to see how much it penetrates our workflow over the next decade.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know our coordinators do use AI quite a bit for some of their administrative tasks and shortcuts, things that can make it easier for them in their work, which is great. I think anything that can help make sure that it's accurate is going to be a great way to use AI. So next big topic that we discussed in the survey is always recruitment. The different changes, signaling, interviews, in-person, virtual. So what we found were most program directors are satisfied with the current signaling structure. There was some suggestion for further tiering. I think there was a few platinum, diamond signals thrown out there. Do you see a benefit from that suggestion? Do you think that is going to change in the near future?
I don't see a change coming. I feel as though because of the high satisfaction rate amongst program directors, there's not going to be too much of an impetus. I kind of like the idea of a platinum signal. It's fun to think of, but announcing your number one choice at the beginning of the season might not be the best. No, people seem to like it. I know that the applicants feel as though it's limiting their options. That being said, if you look at the data that's coming out, it is effectively distributing interviews more widely, meaning that graduates from your medical school, for example, who have great applications aren't taking 45 interviews across the country. So if they're being limited to 15 plus or minus a few, that's opening up dozens of interviews for other people who might not be quite as competitive, but are more likely to go to those programs that were previously granting interviews to these outstanding applicants. The downside is, and I wonder if you're doing the same thing, if it's making it easier for us, are we interviewing fewer people? And if that isn't downstream effect of the signals, then it might actually end up obviating the benefits we think we're conferring to applicants. So are you interviewing less?
We are interviewing the same number that we have for the past few years with the signal starting and before that. So no change in our numbers. How about you guys?
A little bit less this year. We had a complement increase last year, and I think I over-interviewed because of a little bit of concern. I didn't know how much it would change how far on my rank list I had to go. Not much. So we're interviewing a little bit less. And I think most people are also interviewing about the same. So it should be redistributing those interviews for the applicants. I like the signals. I'm guessing you love the signals too. I hope the applicants can learn to love them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And we touched on this in our previous episode, but what I always realize when I go to SAAAPM and have this session is that programs are so different, right? Small, medium tiered, large, all across the country, urban settings, suburban settings, rural settings, and every program needs something different. So it's hard to find the right number that everybody's going to agree with. But like you said, I think most program directors, I think of 68%, were satisfied with the current structure. Seems to be working. And so also agree that I like them and hopefully we'll continue to do this and likely not to change in the near future.
Yeah, I was surprised. That was a higher number than I expected.
Yeah. And it's been a few years. I think we've gotten used to it. We've adjusted how we look at applications, our interviews, things like that. So everything takes a few years before there's more wide adoption.
Mm-hmm.
Next topic that was also discussed within the meeting is second looks and in-person second looks. 51% of programs are offering in-person second looks. Do you think this is the future of anesthesia interviews?
I think so. Are you guys doing them?
We are, yeah.
How long have you guys been doing them for?
This will be our second year. Yeah, we did it for the first time last year. Decided to do it again this year.
The applicants seem to like it. I do think that the downside is that there was a large equity argument for the virtual interviews. And obviously the second looks, if they were to have some impact on ranking, would definitely negate some of that benefit to people who wouldn't have the resources to go. We're going to be submitting, we actually already finalized our rank list. We do it really early. So we have second looks in February, so they will not impact ranking. That being said, I still think there's an equity argument just in terms of the ability for those who can afford it to go to second looks and get a better sense of where they want to go. So we're definitely losing a little bit on the equity. And that being said, I think the applicants are able to filter out the programs that previously they thought they would have had to go to in person. Maybe they go to the interview, they're not as interested. They can pick a half dozen of programs that maybe they want to visit for second looks, even fewer. So it's definitely going to save them money. So I think it's probably the future and I like it. I'm seeing a lot more of it this year. What do you think? Do you think this is going to be the new normal?
We were hesitant to go back to in-person second looks for all of the reasons that you mentioned, just with equity and also, ensuring that applicants didn't feel that they had to and that, we would submit our rank list and that it was submitted and locked, but that there was still no pressure on the applicant to come. And so we hesitated for a long time about doing it. But, coming to California in February is always wonderful and, bright sunny day and you get to see our beautiful campus. And so we thought there would be a lot of benefit of just checking out the hospital, checking out the area for applicants who may have never been to the Bay Area, been to California. So thought we would, showcase our program a bit with the second books.
We have the exact opposite situation because New York City in February is just a way of making them sure that they can tolerate the worst weather we have every year. But another benefit we found is, I'm not sure if you're experiencing the same thing. Money is tight in healthcare systems. We've had some budget cuts in terms of our social events, and second looks have been my hack. It's a way for me to get some funding for some social time for the residents. They just have to hang out with a bunch of applicants at the same time. So it's 4 little get-togethers over the course of the winter when otherwise we're having some budget cuts in terms of our other social events. So there's also some side benefit for our program and our residency.
You talk about negating some of the benefits of the virtual interviews. How do you feel about away rotations and that experience and how that might also not create a very equitable system?
Well, absolutely. To the extent that these away rotations are improving people's chances of matching, they definitely would have that impact of decreasing equity for people with fewer resources. That being said, Mount Sinai actually offers some scholarships. So I believe this year we hosted 3 different rotators who got a scholarship. It pays for housing and it pays for some cost of living issues. There are some institutions that are trying to offset those things, but I got to tell you, the benefit to me as a residency program director are huge. Getting a chance to work with someone for a month is better than any interview. It gives them a chance to get to know us. We get to know them. They're very happy when they match because they know the program well, and we're very happy when we match them because we know them so well. I would say that over the last 3 years, when we've focused more on our rotators, between 30 and 50% of our incoming residents are now people who have done rotations. Are you seeing the same?
Similar. And we also are fortunate to offer a similar scholarship program to students to come. And so offsets, the cost of living here in the Bay Area and the ability to come travel and stay here. We do not offer an automatic interview to all of our visiting students. So that's also something that we're very upfront when they apply and they choose to come here. But I agree. I think this is the best in-person second look you can have of a program. I really see it as an opportunity for the students to really get to know the program, to live the life of the resident, and see if this is a place that they would be happy and successful in their training. So I do think there are a lot of benefits, but I agree with the continuing discussion about, how that may negate some of the benefits of the virtual interviews and equity issues with that as well.
If nothing else, they're saving money. If nothing else, half of our people, half of our residents did not rotate. None of them have to do a second look. And I think they're still getting the benefits of the cost savings over the course of the interview season. And we're saving the environment. People aren't flying all over the country as much. So, there are still benefits there.
Absolutely. There was also a great discussion at the meeting about just angst with all the tasks that we need from others, residents following up on patients postoperatively, evaluations, and that being asked of both of our faculty and our residents. You've been in your role for over a decade now. What are some good strategies that you've developed over the years to help you with all these tasks that, you don't necessarily have full control over?
Oh my goodness. I wish I had a really good answer to this question. We were talking about burnout earlier. I think this is probably one of the bigger drivers of burnout. I used to wake up in cold sweats in the middle of the night thinking about my evaluations. And if the ACGME did a site visit, where are my evaluations at? It's hard. And I think a lot of it's driven by the amount of support that we have. My former program coordinator called me into her office one day. At the time, we were scheduling international rotation with a Midwestern Department of Anesthesiology who had set it up. They were kind of running the whole thing. And she was interfacing with their program coordinators. So she called me into her office so I could look at the website. And she was scrolling down to see all of the office help, all the coordinators they had. They had over a dozen over a dozen for a program that was about the same size as mine. In New York City, the cost of living is very high. We meet the ACGME requirement, but we have a mere fraction of the help that they have. So it can be hard without people who are devoted and their job is, tracking down these evaluations and making sure they're getting done. The strategy I have found is organization. So I tell all my coordinators when they start the job, we've had a little bit of turnover. I want two things. I want a calendar and I want our evaluations checked. And everything else is honestly not as big of a deal. So every month we do a quick audit and then just follow up to make sure that things are done. We put it on the calendar so we don't forget. And then we just have to continuously track people down. Now that needs help. And sometimes I have to step in and do it, but it's an ACGME requirement to get all those things done. And it's more than evaluations. It's, residents doing post-op evaluations, residents doing their tests, residents doing their evaluations for you. It's a constant struggle and it never ends. I'm going to ask you at the most well-resourced program I've encountered so far, Stanford, how do you guys handle all those kinds of things?
I think you're right. Organization is huge, kind of within our coordinator team, someone being the point person, so really leading those efforts. It does take a lot of reminders. I do think we, bombard our residents with, fill out your duty hours, fill out this evaluation, and maybe they'll read one of those emails, we hope. But same thing with faculty. It's constant reminders. We have one of my coordinators send off the email, and if we're not hearing back, then I end up having to get involved, and hopefully my email is going to, be read with a little bit more urgency to complete those evaluations. Or sometimes it's hallway conversations like, oh, by the way, you have an evaluation you haven't filled out yet, and just, friendly reminders throughout the day. But it's hard. It's hard because everybody is very task saturated with everything else they're doing, right? And so we are asking a lot of our residents and of our faculty. And, we're kind of the middlemen trying to make sure that they're doing what we ask them to do. But at the end of the day, we still need them to, open their email, fill out the evaluation. And we've also become a little bit, I think, as a faculty and as I think a little bit about academic medicine, about, what's the incentive for me to do this? And so there's a little bit of that too. As I talk to faculty, it's a lot to ask, right? There's just more tasks that are needed. And what's the incentive for me? And try to make sure that they understand why it's important.
Well, some programs have instituted financial incentives or penalties, and that also carries its own issues. I've spoken to some program directors where they've instituted penalties or incentives, and for example, the evaluations get done, but they end up being meaningless, meaning the person will fill out the minimum, and you're not getting good information from it. So it's tough. But we don't want to be the person that everyone's avoiding in the hallways one day. But I think we might end up there.
Yeah, I think sometimes when they see me walking down the hallway and they turn the corner, I know there's evaluations due. I must avoid conversations with her, hoping to avoid that. But I do have a lot of great faculty who just get it done. And I agree, right? I think don't just do it, but they need to have some meaningful evaluations, meaningful feedback so that they actually are worth something to our residents. So you mentioned that your rank list is done, which I'm very jealous of. Very busy season for PDs across the country as we're in interview season, still have all the other residency administrative duties as well. How do you manage that? And how have you learned over the years to manage kind of the lift of application cycle while juggling your clinical work, running the residency program, personal lives over the holidays? What's the secret sauce? What have you figured it out?
Well, I've learned a lot of lessons, and I'm also interested to hear if any of this resonates with you. I see a lot of people who have strategies for getting tasks accomplished. I see a lot of to-do lists out there. I don't make to-do lists. I don't keep a running list of anything. My secret sauce is organization and habits. I tell people that my organization and habits will eat through any amount of work. I know someone who once said, if you want to get something done, give it to someone who's busy, which seems counterintuitive, but I know exactly what he meant now. I'm a busy person, but I just keep very organized. I use certain strategies. I use like a zero inbox for my email strategy where if my resident asks me for a letter of recommendation, I say email that. If someone texts me a request, I say, thank you for this, I'll do it, email me that. So that's my central hub. I keep a calendar. When I go to bed at night, I don't think about all the things I have to do because I just know there's a place where it's sitting and I have a system and I will slowly chug through it. And it really allows me to get a lot of work done. I don't let things hang over my head. I let them hang out there in the inbox, and I know that I'm going to see it whenever I open that darn thing, and it'll get done eventually. Habits and organization. Whenever I meet someone who takes on this role, I really try to impress the importance of that because as a program director especially, our residents have to be able to rely on us and our colleagues. I know when I started this job 12 years ago, I was maybe not the most responsible and organized person. And I realized that in this role, I had to be that for people. So I developed a system and, you don't want to miss things. You don't want to have one of your mentees, one of your residents coming to you and saying, I was trying to apply for this fellowship, through the SEA to travel and I missed the deadline because you didn't finish my letter. That would be terrible. I'd be devastated. So organization, habits, and allows you to sleep at night because you know that even if you have some things out there that have to get done, you have a system. It won't get lost. It will get caught. And it allows me to work through a lot of volume of work. How about you? How are you hanging in there in this busy season? And did anything I say resonate with how you do things, or you have a different system?
I'm a list person, so I do like to make lists, but my email inbox also is what keeps me really well organized. Reminders in there of things that I need to do. I also try to keep a 0 inbox rule and try to get through everything as much as I can. I will say that compared to 2 years ago, which was my first recruitment season, first 6 months as a program director, I feel so much better today than I did 2 years ago in the same spot. I think you figure out what works for you, how to organize yourself, like you said, and just how to get through it. And my first year, I would go to bed and think about all the things that I needed to do. Now I know, I will get it done. It'll get done, and make sure that I hit those important deadlines, like you mentioned, like for those fellowship letters or things that are on a timeline, and everything else will fall into place. I think it's lessons learned over the years, right? Of that you can get through it. Things will work out, and it's a lot of work. I'm not saying it's not a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but I think most of us thrive, right, in these environments where we just got a lot going on and we just get it done.
Have you started saying no yet?
A little bit more, a little bit more. And I have relied more on my associate program directors, definitely, compared to when I first started, as I was trying to learn about the things the program needed and the responsibilities of the program director. So it was hard for me to, ask someone else to do these tasks if I didn't necessarily know what the task was or how to do it myself. So definitely this year, I've asked more of my program director, of my associate program directors, in different ways.
Yeah, delegation is also a very, very hard lesson to learn. I don't think I've learned it yet, but I'm still working on it.
So, we talked about busy time of year and back to the statistic that we first started with that, very few program directors see themselves in a career in more than 4 to 6 years, brings up the topic of burnout and how do we avoid that in our roles and how do we keep the pipelines of program directors, continuing and successful?
Well, there's so many lessons that we learn, and you mentioned it gets easier, and it gets easier and easier as the years go on. And it's a shame that people don't build up that skill set and continue to utilize it. They leave the profession, or they leave this line of work. Also clinically, I'm an obstetric anesthesiologist, and it's kind of frightening to think about how much I've learned over a decade of practice. I feel bad that I was so much less of a physician 10 years ago for the patients I was taking care of, but unfortunately nothing but time can give you that enhanced skill set, that better judgment, and that applies to clinical practice, it applies to our administrative work. So it's a shame that we're losing people who are acquiring those skills. I do think that institutions and chairs can go a long way in helping program directors. We mentioned previously that we're in this position that can oftentimes be at odds with the interests of the faculty. That's not to say faculty aren't on board with the educational mission. It's just because of their position in the department, there are things they would probably love the residents to do for them to make their life easier. That's just not the resident's job. Also, for the chair, I think there are a lot of chairs out there that look at all of these residents floating around doing these, is that research they're doing? Or what is this non-clinical rotation they're on? They're like these choice delectable, bodies they could be putting in operating rooms to help their bottom line so the hospital administration's happier with the job they're doing. So I think that faculty, specifically the leadership of the department chairs, can really help out. So I think meetings like the SAAAPM where we're networking are good. Maybe we should have more cross-pollination where the chairs get to hear about some of our struggles. Luckily, a lot of chairs were in our chair or our shoes at some point in time, so they understand. Also, I don't know how much over the last couple of years you've had to deal with this, but learning to not take things too personally. I think all of us have to get there. A lot of what we deal with is structural, has nothing to do with us. When I started my job, one of my mentors says, your assignment is to memorize the ACGME program requirements. Because whenever someone gives you a hard time, that's always going to be your answer. It's not about me. So never let people personalize things. Oftentimes in the workplace, things can get very political to the extent that we can depoliticize, depersonalize, just make it very much about what the job is, can go a very, very long way. I just said a lot. So you're kind of earlier. So I wonder if your experience right now is different from where I am kind of over a decade in. What do you think would help you be in this role a decade from now?
So many of the things that you talked about, I think things I've learned in my short tenure is to not take things personally, that people are in roles that they're advocating for what they think is best because of their role, and it's not personal. When residents come up with issues, there are requirements that we can always refer back to, that we need to be thinking about their educational experience, and they may be angry about something, but it's not you. It's not personally attacking you. And that has definitely helped me deal with issues that have come up over the past year or two, and realizing that I need to have an objective approach to how I'm dealing with these issues and responding. And it's not that they are personally trying to attack me. They're just angry with something within the system that I can hopefully help them understand a little bit better as I respond. I also agree that support from the department, which may be non-clinical time, resources, understanding that these are the struggles that you're going through, and having those conversations with your chair and having them help you as well is huge. And I love that idea of a crossover, because I do think they probably have very similar thoughts about leadership issues dealing with faculty and as we deal with residents. And so it'll likely resonate, and a lot of synergy and the feelings that and issues that we have. My biggest thing is when things seem hard, I think about my why, right? Why am I doing this? What am I getting out of this? What do I want to achieve? And why does this bring me joy? And I think that's a lot of what I remind the residents, my friends and faculty that are struggling with burnout is what's your why? Why did we start to do this in the first place? And kind of always going back to that as kind of the guiding light.
That's an awesome statement. It actually brings something to mind. So I always tell my residents when it's 6:30, 7 p.m., you didn't think you'd be in the OR that late. You're starting to grind your gears a little bit. I say just take a moment and look down. There's going to be a face under a bear hugger with an endotracheal tube coming out of it. And just know that there's someone in the waiting area who's anxiously awaiting word that their loved one, their daughter, their mother, their husband is okay. And you've been put in charge of guiding them through that. So stop grinding your gears and become a little bit other focused, and it will really snap you out of it. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but I get invited to some resident weddings. And honestly, I don't have a lot of time on my weekends, so it takes up some of my personal time, but it's always worth doing. And the reason it's worth doing is I go to these weddings, and it's not the residents that I'm always watching. I'm looking at their parents. And I'm thinking about all of the work, all of the love, investment, hopes, and dreams that have been put into this person that I've been tasked with raising professionally. And it reminds me of how important the role that I've been blessed with is, and that it really helps me through all this and makes me realize how worthwhile everything is. So I think you're so right. The why goes a very long way in every aspect of our life. And it's helped me. I think I have a number of years still left in me, but those little reminders go a long way to help.
Yeah, I love the phrase, you're raising them professionally. That's so spot on. So to end, I think as we are getting through interview season, we are seeing some amazing applicants, meeting them, folks that are doing really amazing work across the country, across the world. Is the future of anesthesia brighter because of this?
Wow. I think one would think it would be. We're getting some of the top applicants. I want to say something that's maybe a little controversial. I wonder if with getting those more competitive applicants, we are getting the future leaders, editors for anesthesiology and anesthesia, the heads of all these professional societies. Obviously, these are the cohort that are going to fill those roles, but I'm not actually sure if we have a higher quantity of people who want to fill the roles. I'm wondering if anesthesia is becoming very competitive for a number of reasons that aren't solely professional in the terms in which we were speaking, like the rewards you get from the work. I mean, there are a lot of benefits. These people are graduating with a lot of debt. The future is uncertain financially. Anesthesia currently is providing a strong, secure financial future. I still think that many medical students look at the different branches of medicine and do believe that anesthesia is more of a lifestyle profession, which I really try to disabuse them of. So sometimes I'm afraid that the increasing competitiveness is not going to have payoff in terms of producing a higher quantity of the leaders, future leaders of anesthesiology. I don't know. Is that a hot take? How does that hit you?
That's interesting. I think that I meet these folks and I'm like, you will be the next, president of the ASA. And I see that in you and I see the potential. And I really hope that for those that are interested in that and that have the skills and the qualities to take them there, that they will be nurtured and continually raised professionally during residency and encouraged to pursue those endeavors because we need them in our profession. We need these folks to want to take on these roles, right? We need people that want to be us in many years. And so I hope to have a different take and a more optimistic that, with the right encouragement, the right mentorship, that they'll continue and be leaders in the field.
Well, for all of our listeners, this is a great life. We get to take care of patients. That's a real privilege we have. As educators, raising the next generation is a real privilege. But there's also this other step of fostering the future of our profession. I'm at the PGA. I'm on the board for the NYSSA. These other roles are really fulfilling and gratifying. And for those of you looking for a great life, the kind of diversity of your day-to-day practice when you are involved, not just clinically, but also administratively, and then in the professional society level is really quite fun. So I hope that you, Marianne, are absolutely correct and these people will take advantage of these opportunities.
Well, thanks so much, Bryan. Always great to chat. And we'll see you, everyone, and chat with everyone at our next episode. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on PDs at SEA. If you found this conversation valuable, we invite you to subscribe and share the podcast with colleagues who are committed to advancing anesthesiology education. You can access additional episodes and resources from the Society for Education in Anesthesia at SAAAPM.org. We welcome your questions and suggestions for future episodes. Please contact us at pdsatSEA@SAAHQ.org. This podcast is produced by the Stanford AIM Lab on behalf of the Society for Education in Anesthesia. Thank you for your dedication to teaching the next generation of anesthesiologists. We'll see you next time on PDs at SEA.